how to become a network engineer in 2025 and beyond, for that matter. So it seems as if people believe that network engineering is dying, and at least that's the consensus I get from my algorithm on YouTube, where you see people telling other people to forget the A+, forget the CCNA, forget Network Plus, and go straight to cloud and go to software development. I remember, as a matter of fact, that people all over was stating that everyone needs to learn how to code, and now a lot of people are backtracking with that school of thought now that AI is here. And I never really liked coding to begin with because that's just really not one of my favorite things to do, or it wasn't my favorite thing to do until the help of AI came along. Now, I use AI to help teach me to code and to teach me to build scripts that help me do my job a lot easier and a lot more efficiently as a network engineer. And this is where I try to attack the whole straw man of what a network engineer is in 2025 and beyond. I will say this: I think the network engineer of the present and therefore the future is not just someone that lives in the CLI, that plugs cables in, that racks switches and routers and firewalls and stuff like that. I think the network engineer of today and the future is more aligned with software developers, or using sort of a DevOps mentality, using CI/CD pipelines to constantly upgrade and update the configurations of the network. And it's ironic because I never really liked the whole idea of software development and programming, coding, etc. But now I'm finding that I'm using AI to build small, safe scripts that run more like apps to help me streamline a lot of the configuration that I do in my home lab and on, a day-to-day basis, right? So I am completely pushing against the idea that network engineers are somehow irrelevant or obsolete in any way, shape, or form. I believe that network engineers have really evolved. At least I have. I've been forced to evolve because I manage somewhere between about 40 switches I manage, and about another 30 firewalls, right? In the pairs, 30 firewall pairs, right? So I'm managing anywhere between 100 to 110 devices, right? And it's no longer good enough for me to go on site and troubleshoot things and plug things in, or log into the CLI and make configurations on the devices locally. I push a lot of configurations from network automation tools, right? I use Ansible, I use Python, I use GitHub to version control a lot of my configurations. And this is not, in my opinion, it's not the traditional network engineer. And so my algorithm is probably just showing me something different than everybody else, but I see people sort of kind of like acting like network engineers are the sort of like redundant, or the traditional. I'm going to be fair and say maybe the way that people view network engineering, they view it in a very traditional sense. I've been in this field for 3 years now, and nothing I do as a network engineer is traditional. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I can call myself a network engineer anymore. I'm more of like a network security engineer, systems administrator, network engineer, DevOps engineer type of mix hybrid, right? Because there's so many tools that allow for us to modernize our roles, and allows for our roles to be streamlined with a lot of the tools and a lot of the advancements that we have, right? And so I say all of that to say, if you are thinking about becoming a network engineer in 2025 and beyond, you have to take into consideration that it's not just racking routers, firewalls, switches, plugging in cables. There's a lot more that you have to know, right? You're not just going to be living in the CLI. If you want to be a serious engineer, you're not just going to be living in the CLI. You're going to be forced to have a centralized location where you can manage all of your configurations, whether it's GitHub or some other network automation or some other versioning control tool or some network automation tools, right? My perspective is always that we should, try to go where the future is going to be, right? And so what I mean by that is I have been very future focused in regard to my job role, in regard to how I do my job, and that actually forced me to transition into cloud technologies, right? And so just a little background, a little backstory. I posted this in my community post tab, right? I posted a little blog post in there, and I basically stated that my journey into automating a lot of the things that I do at work with GitHub and Ansible and Python kind of was the gateway into the cloud architectures, right? And so I started learning the concept of infrastructure as code, started learning a little bit about Terraform, how we can use Terraform to provision so many resources and then use Ansible to configure those resources, right? And so with that being said, the network engineer of the future is not necessarily the network engineer that many people have in their mind, right? They have this image of network engineers that everybody's just going to be living in the CLI and plugging cables in, and everybody's just so hyper, Cisco focused, right? And so that brings me to my next point. If you want to become a network engineer, here's what I think you should do. And again, this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, or a little bit of feathers, however many feathers it's going to ruffle, right? But I do really think that if you're starting fresh in this career, you should at least consider studying for the A+ certification, because the A+ certification contains so much foundation that when you study for it, when you really go through the motions of getting all that information and understanding all of that information, you learn essentially how to do everybody else's job, right? Or you learn what everybody else's job is. And that's very important, because when the network inevitably breaks, you got to be able to defend the network. A lot of your time as a network engineer is going to be spent defending the network. And so for me personally, having that huge solid foundation in the A+, the A+ exam objectives, or the however many millions of objectives they have in the A+ certification, it allows for me to effectively defend the network. And I think one of the things that comes with defending the network is reducing the amount of time you spend troubleshooting something that is not in your scope or domain in the first place, right? For example, there's going to be people that say that their crappy little app is not working, and they're going to blame the network. And the funny thing about people that develop apps, or people that told us, oh, go straight to coding, or go straight to cloud, or go straight to cybersecurity, is that these people don't understand how the network works. And so that shows in the way that they design their apps, right? That shows in the way that they troubleshoot some of the things that they configure on their computers, right? And it wastes so much time, because you're essentially having to prove a negative. Like it's very odd. Like, how do you prove something that doesn't exist? You have to kind of like position yourself in their position, know their job enough to know, hey, well, it can't be this because, and then you have to explain it. And having network knowledge, at least a good solid network, a good solid base of network fundamentals, allows for you to see the bigger picture, right? And so I think that the network engineer of the present and the future is very hybrid. Network engineering is the main thing, and it always stayed the main thing, right? I've transitioned to more of a network security posture, but I build networks, right? I'm on I think my 15th. There's 2 more networks that I have to build over the next 2 months or so, right? So that'll bring me up to a total of 16 network builds. And being a network engineer means you're a network security engineer, at least in my position, because my position is very hybrid and very all-encompassing with regard to the scope. And I have to build these networks with security in mind, right? So when I'm building these networks, I have to implement network segmentation, and then I also have to deploy access rules that controls traffic between each of these network segments, right? I also have to check the perimeter, make sure that there's no issues with the interfaces that sit on the perimeter of the network, right? A lot of what I did when I first started this position is to check the attack surface, the perimeters of the network, ACL audits and all of that, in addition to building the networks out, right? So all of that comes with the complexity of having to learn DevOps philosophies, right? And learn, versioning control, because if you're managing all these networks, like I said before, I'm getting a little redundant here, no pun intended, because people think network engineers are redundant. But I had to learn how to version control a lot of those configurations, right? Because as I configure the networks and the configurations get a lot more complex, I need to version control it. There's a video that I posted that stated that, network automation, essentially I accidentally crashed the network by updating some firmware. And that was one of the most ridiculous things. I don't know why a firmware would crash the network, but it happens. What I ended up doing was just being able to restore the network by just uploading the configuration that I had stored in a Git repository, right? And so that's a concept that, it's called mean time to recovery, right? The time it took to do that by just having the latest configuration, the most up-to-date configuration sitting in a repository somewhere, and all I had to do was just upload the configuration, right? It took not even 5 to 10 minutes to recover, right? And so again, the network engineer of the present and the future is so much more encompassing. And now I'd also say this, and I mentioned it before, I'm transitioning into the cloud space, and there's people that made comments about how AI is going to reduce the workforce, and good luck with that, because AI is going to be able to do a lot of cloud engineers' jobs and stuff like that. Here's how I look at it. First of all, I'm always going to be an optimist, and I think that if you are in this field, you should be thinking of how can you get to a higher and higher level. For example, instead of thinking of being a cloud engineer, you could be something more along the lines of a cloud architect, someone that is more aligned with the business objectives, right? Someone that understands more of the more of a systems engineer type of mentality, right? Where you understand how all of these pieces work together. Now, of course, AI can code, right? I don't know, I can't really get a good fix on how well AI can code right now, because I'm not really sitting there managing and thinking about that too much. But I do think that there's something to be said about how AI can allow for you to evolve in a sense where you're thinking more of the business goals and the business objectives, and how to move to more of a design architect type of thing. Because at some point you have to interface with another human, and that human has to tell you what they want in order for infrastructure to be built, right? In order for all of this stuff to come together, humans have to make decisions. But until, AI is making all of the business decisions at the very highest of high levels that interact with some of the more technical people, then I really don't see AI as a threat in the sense that people think they're a threat when it comes to like cloud and network engineering and cybersecurity. I've been seeing a lot of scary things in cybersecurity, but I don't take a cynical approach to AI as people do, right? Because for me, I've used AI to pretty much augment my role. Right. So the how, right? I kind of like got off track. The how. If you want to become a network engineer, I would say start with the foundation, A+. Understand how everybody else's job works. Learn how to do everybody else's job. Don't do everybody's job, but learn how to do it. And the big part of being a network engineer or a network architect in any kind is that you have to understand how your network configurations is going to impact these services that are running on the network, right? You need to understand how if you deploy a specific access rule, how that's going to impact some sort of server that's running that a system admin spun up. Also, I think that you should get or study for a CCNA. People get all in their feelings when I say you should get a CCNA. I'm not sitting here trying to be a Cisco homerist, right, or whatever you want to call it, where the person is just, or a Cisco fanboy as people call it. But for me personally, studying for Cisco, the CCNA has took me through a lot of difficulties, and I've grown from those difficulties, and now I'm good at what I do because I had to go through the trenches studying for that exam. That exam was very, at least for me, was very difficult, and I had to really challenge myself, right? I had to challenge myself to think differently. Beyond the CCNA, I had to read books on logic, decision making, things like that, right? And going into the cloud, I'm being forced to look beyond just studying for a specific certification to get the base knowledge, right? I'm also studying systems engineering, right? So I would definitely say you can study for the CCNA, go through the exam objectives, get the skills out of the certification. If you don't want to spend the money on the certification, fine. But I do think that you'd be more competitive if someone sees that you have a certification as well as your experience, which can come from labs, home labs that you do, right? Little projects that you can, do and put in GitHub or put on a video or something like that and link it in your resume, right? So those are the basics. I would say get the solid foundation of the A+, get the CCNA, or not, just study for these things and get the skills. And my perspective on the certifications is that for me and a lot of other people that I know, certifications allow for you to gain the knowledge in more of a streamlined, efficient fashion, right? You get exam objectives that tell you what you need to know. The certification hopefully is updated to industry standards and best practices, and you can just sit down and you know what you need to know. You have a good solid start and foundation and a good path for learning, right? But there's some people that just go, oh no, just get the skills that you need and learn. Okay, well, how are you gonna know what you don't know if you're just configuring it? Come on, if you're just learning how to configure a router and a switch and a firewall in the CLI and the GUI, that's barely enough in my opinion. How are decisions made? And I think this is where the textbooks expand the concepts and give you theory. A lot of people hate on theory, but with AI, right? And this is where reading comes into play. With AI can do a lot of the technical stuff now, right? AI is snatching a lot of people's technical roles, right? So you do need more theory so that you can understand how decisions are made, and so you can interface better with decision makers. For example, in my role, I'm not just a system admin, network engineer, network security engineer. I go into meetings and I have to explain to people, stakeholders, decision makers, how our systems work and how it congeals with the with the business objectives, or I have to talk to stakeholders to figure out what they want and then configure it accordingly, right? I can't just go in there and just have the know-how and just start typing in the CLI, right? Also got to understand efficiency. Is there a faster way to do my job to save time, to save money, and to take those resources and put it back into the process, right? All of these things matter at the end of the day. But like I said, there are some people that want to just stick to the technical aspects of it. And oh, by the way, you got to develop soft skills. You need to read books. I forgot the name of the book, right? Dang. I forgot the name of the book, but I'll probably link it or just put it in the description or throw it somewhere around here. But it basically teaches you how to have good conversations or better conversations with people, right? Is that the name of the book? I don't know. But there's so much that goes into being a network engineer in the present and beyond, right? In 2025 and beyond. It's not just about getting your CCNA and then walking into an interview and thinking that you're going to get the job. You're now going to have to evolve with the times. And again, it's going to cap the video off with this. Network engineering is not what a lot of people are making it out to be in these videos that tell you don't become a network engineer. I do think that it's still valuable to become a network engineer. And when I say to become a network engineer, I'm not saying that you being a network engineer is dependent on whether someone hires you into that role, right? Because you know that there's a lot of people in the field that kind of have this gray area approach with job titles, right? Where an employer can put you as a certain, like put you as a systems engineer or systems administrator, but you might more so work on the security side or the network engineer side because of the pay bands or the budgets or whatever it is, right? But you might be required to do something that doesn't exactly align with your job title, right? And so you can be and become a network engineer without it being something where, my job title says that. But what do you do? In a sense, you are what you do, right? If you are a network person, you can work on networks, right? That's what you do. Your job title might say something different. They might have you doing something different, but you need to decide what trajectory you're going to take your career in, right? You define what you are. You define that if you're a network person or a security person or a coding, software developer, software engineer, whatever, right? So that's what I mean. Becoming a network engineer is more so, it's more than just your job title. It's about you studying the craft. And if you study the craft, put the work in, market yourself that way, people will start coming to you for that network expertise, if that makes sense. A few months ago, a friend of mine hit me up about setting up a network at a church, at their church, and I help him get the design going and all of that stuff. And that's because I always market myself as a network guy, right? Again, more recently, I'm more network security and cloud focused, but this is how, you get those type of opportunities when you market yourself in a specific way, right? So this video wasn't too technical. This was more of an update on what I view network engineering to be, at least in my scope and in my field, because there are a lot of people I don't see, and again, it could be my algorithm, but I don't see many people talking about the software and the development aspect of network engineering. And for me, I know I'm early in my career and I'm blessed to have the scope that I have and the role that I have, because I'm very early on, I'm managing so much that it's requiring me to push myself into the senior level and use the senior level tools and to have the senior level thinking, because I manage so much, right? So this is just my perspective on it. Get that A+, get that CCNA, I would say definitely get a cloud cert. I'm working on the AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification right now. Learn Python, learn Ansible, and cloud is a whole other video, right? Cloud is very network heavy, and I laugh because cloud is so much easier for me to learn because I have all of this network knowledge, right? But hey, this is just my perspective. Do whatever you want to do, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.